Hi, everyone. As usual, we'll get started in just a couple minutes, give everybody a chance to get off their last call. We'll be right back with you. Thanks. All right, it is that time, and thank you for everybody for attending today. We are going to be going through vulnerabilities today, but just to go over sort of the structure, we'll start with intros and then do high-level overview. David's going to then do a little sort of demo high-level overview from the actual interface for those who haven't seen it before, but we're going to keep that pretty brief. Then we're going to talk about these new enhancements with our two new vulnerability features in version 5.0, along with our new views capability, which just speeds things up a lot when using Bacon. And then we will wrap it up. So we'll try to be pretty efficient today, but the goal is to give you sort of this sneak peek of what we're going to be showing off at RSA, which is our very complete vulnerability management options. We found that in sort of polling lots of people that this is a huge time suck for people, and other tools really are not doing this very much. So Dave, if you wouldn't mind, let's throw up the intro slide there just so people know who we are. I'm John Marcato, the CTO, co-founder of Bacon Unlimited, and also just a 25-year sysadmin. And with me is another long-term sysadmin and jack of all trades in IT, Dave Adekoya. He's also our most excellent demo guy that I've seen, so certainly better than me. So Dave, thanks for joining me.
As always, thanks for having me.
So today, I'm really excited to talk about vulnerabilities. This is kind of the early sneak peek of what we're going to be showing at RSA coming up here in early May. So this is a good opportunity for existing clients and people who are looking at the platform to see something that's going to be pretty revolutionary. There isn't a huge amount of options out there to do the full complement of what this tool can do with these capabilities. So we're really excited to show that off. Before we jump into that, though, let's do a little quick housekeeping, as we always do. If you haven't used GoToWebinar before, there's a question section. There is a survey section, and there's polls. And so the polls will just pop up, and if you wouldn't mind answering those, that's great. The survey will be at the end. We certainly appreciate your feedback on what you see in the features and just the overall webinar experience. And the questions, you can just pop in there and ask whatever you want. We'll try to answer throughout the webinar. So thanks for doing that in advance. In addition, if you don't know a lot about Bacon or you need to get some training, we do have a huge amount of videos on our Bacon Bits page on YouTube. So lots of little short videos there and showing you how to do things that can be helpful if you're evaluating, kind of want to understand how things are supposed to be done, but also really helpful for people kind of just getting trained up. So check that out as well. And with that, I think we are gonna move ahead here. And for those of you going to RSA, this is a little map of where we'll be. So we'll be in the North Expo Hall at 6284. That's that little arrow down there. I'm sure that's just all you would need to see, and you'll remember it, but just to give you a sense for where we'll be. And we will be giving away some cool stuff at the booth. So if you come there and sign up, you'll have multiple chances to win some pretty cool stuff, including a sick e-bike. So with that, let's move into polls, Dave. All right, poll time. So you should have a poll launch up there. On a scale of 1 to 5, how important is vulnerability management in your organization? Maybe you don't have to do that. Maybe somebody else does it for you. Maybe you're a wizard and you can do it with your mind. Or
Ooh, that's a good trick.
Yeah, those are all neat things that I would like to be able to do. So we'll let people just quickly answer that one. But so far, the overall arching feeling is a 4 or 5 seems to be the winner. Really only about 20% of people said, sort of a 2 or a 1, which is great. Nobody's a 3. Nobody's in the middle on this one. It's a very polarizing issue, apparently. So there we go. So yeah, about 80% said 4 or 5. So that's not particularly surprising, and you're definitely in the right place looking at this webinar. Let's launch that second poll. Get that out of the way. What operating systems do you currently support? This is just good for us to know, since we support all of these, and we'd like to know what kind of issues people have. Let's see. Well, pretty good mix there. Got a lot of people, everybody using Windows, and a third to a half of people using the Linux or iOS or Mac OS. So yeah, Mac OS, 50% of the people on this call have that in their environment. So something that we definitely wanted to take into consideration here. Well, thank you for answering those polls. They are informative, and they sort of help us talk about some of these concerns. I think with that, Dave, let's get into why bacon, and I'm going to kind of go a little bit off script here today, because why use bacon in general? Well, visibility, control, and automation, right? That's kind of the way we think about things. Using good endpoint management that can work securely from anywhere, so your endpoints can be anywhere, and you can still know what's going on with them and control them and do all of the things you need to do to keep your environment productive and secure. And that's really the name of the game, right? If we're talking simply about what we do in IT when we're dealing with infrastructure and endpoints, we're making things more productive and we're making them more secure. Usually in the opposite order there. Security is sort of the first thing that we need to do, and then on top of that, we can be productive, which is important because that's how businesses make money. So how does this new feature kind of come into play here? Well, I think really what we're talking about is giving a greater level of control on these really mundane but critical tasks. Because dealing with vulnerabilities, if you do it properly, means that you understand what vulnerabilities exist on your machines and you mitigate them, and that you know in quick fashion which ones are the most severe and concerning. We've got some interesting things coming to make that even more noted or more understood. And then the other part is that it doesn't just take all your time, right, in doing this stuff. And what we found is a lot of our larger customers may have multiple people who literally are just dealing with mitigating patches all day. And mitigating patches is not a simple thing. It is not just patching. Some people think that, and patching is a big part of it. It's really important to stay patched, but also it's about third-party software upgrades, and it's about configuration changes, and it's about getting rid of systems or software that are never going to be safe again. Like if you have Adobe Flash, you shouldn't, right? These are things that should be removed from your environment. They're just ongoing risks and concerns. So Dave, why don't you flip the slide there, and I'll just make sure that everybody who maybe doesn't know Bacon understands the totality of kind of what we do. So what we is sort of this security first cross-platform endpoint management system. As I mentioned, you can use it from anywhere. We do work with all the major operating systems, and we are really focused on trying to make endpoints not be such a huge risk point and such a challenging management point for IT crews. And it's got something for everybody. So it is kind of multi-level security-wise. We do have role-based access control, so you can allow maybe tier 1 help desk person can remote in and fix machines, do help desk tickets, but maybe they don't have the ability to change all the configurations on all the machines, right? These are controls that people need in bigger teams, and we've always had that in Bacon, and you can really control sort of who has access to what by what things they can do, but also by which groups of systems they can access for those different roles or things that they can do. So Bacon does patching, it does software deployment, even very complex multi-file software. We do that much more simply than a lot of things out there, and we could do it from anywhere. We now do, in this upcoming version, vulnerability management, and so there is some tie-in there with patching, some crossover. And Dave's going to show today how that kind of goes. We do monitoring, so you can monitor resources and services that are stopped and daemons that are stopped and started and things like that. But also a lot of little subtle things like monitoring for machines that don't have a particular version of the software that's really important to you, or do have certain software that you don't want them to have. All of these kinds of things can be monitored and alerted on, and you have a lot of customizability in that. I think one of the biggest things we do is we allow you to control every setting that exists on every system. The system is somewhat open-ended on the configuration management side, so that you can really customize that to get things in your environment the way that you want them. So that's kind of the main focus of Bacon. I did mention too, it does remote connectivity and management, so you can get into the CLI, the file system, and the screen of remote systems, and you can do that in helping users, but you can also do it in an unattended way. And we've made it very focused on what IT people need. So it's got a lot of little extra tools that people who work in IT really require, changing the bandwidth settings so that maybe it looks a little grainier, but you can get through to low bandwidth systems, and the ability to work with multiple monitors or change the way that they look, and just a lot snappier and higher performance than really any remoting tool that was built in the past. So when you mix all those things in, and you're really running at the console root level where you can see everything, you're never like obfuscated from passwords or things like that, it just really opens up what an IT person can do, and it really takes away that hindrance of being far away from systems. So I don't want to bore you guys anymore with kind of the high level chat. Dave, I think it's a good time for you to jump in, maybe give the real quick nickel tour of Bacon, and then let's jump into these new features, because I think that's what a lot of people here are really excited about for today.
Alrighty, that sounds good. So let's switch over to our demo environment. Perfect. Alrighty, so how it's going to work is we're going to split this between two environments. We have our demo server. This is running like our current version of Bacon. Then we have our beta server, which is going to show off some of those new features that we want you to see. So let's start with just a quick overview, as John said. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Bacon, welcome. I also see a lot of very familiar names in chat from current customers, so love seeing you guys. Thanks for coming. Let's go ahead and get started with our overview page. So we have a couple different widgets here that I'm going to explain, and then I'm going to go quickly down the nav bar and kind of cover some of the larger features. So we have alerts. Bacon's able to have a built-in monitor, as John said, and we can monitor for things like CPU performance, RAM utilization, drive utilization, stuff like that. We can track services, if machines are online. We can track if software's out of date or patches are too old, that kind of stuff. Next up here, we can see which endpoints are online versus offline. Then we have distribution. As John said, we are cross-platform, so it may be helpful to just track which devices you have in your environment. One thing to keep in mind too is as I'm going through here, our UI is pretty interactive. So if I was to click on Windows, it's actually going to filter me to the source of data. In this case, filtering my endpoints table by all operating systems equal to Windows. Back on the overview page, we go over to patches. We can see what patches or packages are available for, to deploy. So we have 25 jobs in Windows. That could be 25 on one machine, maybe split between multiples. Again, if we click on this, it would bring us to that patching page to see those available patches. Next up, for antivirus protection, we're able to track which AV is actually running and installed on a machine versus those machines that don't have any. How this works is we allow you to specify your service or services to track. What that means really is that you can track multiple solutions. So let's say you have like a new acquisition, they already have a license running, but we still want to be able to monitor and make sure that they're using that AV to the best of our ability. Well, we can easily track multiple services on machines across operating systems so we can contribute to this counter here that lets you know that I have 6 unprotected machines and 10 that are protected. And lastly, encrypted hard drives. So we're able to track BitLocker on Windows as well as FileVault on Mac OS to make sure that your machines are encrypted. Now going through here really quickly, let's take a peek at monitoring, not too long. So here we're seeing that we have different rule sets. We can alert on kind of two things here. So we have our standard rules. These are ones that you create for, hey, track my memory usage on my SQL server, make sure the service is running, give me information about patches. But then we also have these profile rules. So Bacon is able to both set configurations and also audit them. So let's say if I wanted to disable USB removable drive access for all of my kiosks in a certain area, maybe like a computer lab, I can do that. And then I can actually have Bacon alert me whenever those configurations were found not to be met. I was absolutely that kid who would just do stuff to computer lab computers in high school. So I would get an alert generated about that if I did that here. Going through there, here we can see the alerts once generated. We have output for, or sorry, we have integration, I should say, with Jira and Autotask over API, so we can both open and close tickets, as well as we're able to send emails to individuals, to groups, to current users of the system. So there's a lot of flexibility here on how you can get alerted to these environmental concerns. Over here we have outages, so here you can schedule to suppress alerts for certain groups or machines. That way you're not generating tickets or emails unnecessarily. And lastly, a knock dashboard, which gives you a visual view of the health in your environment. A lot of these are in red status, probably because they have either patches outstanding or they have some critical alerts that have been triggered. Next up, over here on the endpoints table, again, we're going to keep it a little bit succinct. Here, we're pulling back a lot of different data points on these machines, things like serial number, if you're running encrypted disks, who's currently logged in, what your IP address or addresses are, all that kind of good stuff. And if I drill down into one of these machines, I'm also able to see this in a more like one-to-one view. So now I can get additional information on the left-hand side here. Again, similar to our endpoints table, we can see this information. On the right, we're able to add tags and notes, as well as we have an additional monitor here just to visually see the resource utilization between CPU and RAM on this machine. Over through here, if we thumb through these, as we click these, it's going to change the context below. So here we can see disk information. If we had encryption on this machine, we'd actually be able to escrow those keys here. So we can escrow both BitLocker and FileVault encryption keys over here. Next up, we can see what interfaces we have on this machine. So we have one NIC here. For policies, we're able to see a couple things. We can see what profiles we've pushed out. You can kind of think of these like GPOs. Really, they're automated configurations or automated tasks. So we're able to, let's say, install software, set registry keys, run scripts, all that kind of stuff on a repeating basis. Next, we can see what software is installed, what patches we have available to install. I'll kind of cover this a little bit more in a moment. What services we have. Of course, with these menus, there's different interaction. For instance, I could uninstall software from this UI. I could push a patch from this UI, or I could start, stop services, or mark them as AV from here as well. And lastly, we have logs. So anytime your machine is doing stuff on behalf of Bacon, we're able to log that action. So that could be if I deploy software, if maybe a profile is activating, like here, it's just setting up Windows updates on a certain interval. We're able to go through and actually see exactly what this machine was involved in as far as what Bacon's doing. Then lastly, we also have a built-in remote, as John mentioned. So here we have a screen, a shell, and a file system remote. Screen remote's exactly what you think. You're going to connect and see the user screen here. It's running as system, so I have all the access to like interact with UAC prompts, admin windows, you name it. Then you also have the built-in shell. This is a backend shell. This one's invisible to your user. This allows you to go through here and run any kind of shell commands as system, which is pretty nice. And so I could like open up PowerShell or even like Python or something like that. I don't know if we have Python on here, but we can always give it a try. Basically anything. Now we don't. But anything that you're looking for, you can do that. It covers any kind of like loading bars, basically all the normal shell interaction is going to be represented here, as well as this is all rendered in the browser, so you're able to copy and paste from here very simply as well. Then lastly, we have file systems. This allows you to interact with the backend file system. We can upload, download files, we can zip up log files and download those, we can make folders, all that kind of good stuff with pretty pretty little effort on our side. Just click upload, add a file, copy, paste, all that kind of good stuff. Next up, we'll take a brief look at patching. So over here, we can see the patches available. I'll filter for Windows just to make this a little bit relevant for, looks like most environments we have there. And so here we're able to see all the patches. So we can pull back information on what we're getting, in this case from Microsoft. So what the patch is for, who needs it, does it need a reboot? Then as we're going through this patching, it's going to allow us to easily deploy this to multiple machines, like so. So I can see the patches I picked up here. Looks like all these ones need a reboot. Then down here in endpoints, it'll show me who needs one of these patches. And so I have 7 machines that need at least one of these 3 that I selected. And then I can get into my scheduling. So here we can push these patches out immediately. We can queue these. So if you're offline, we'll catch you. And if you're online, we'll send it to you right away. We can do a schedule time. So we can pick a time and a date in order to push these out. And then we also have relentless mode, which allows you to kind of define a time frame, and then Bacon will patch and reboot in that time frame until either all the patches are installed or we exceed that time frame. So this kind of gives you some automation there with little effort. So now instead of checking in on your SQL server on like Saturday at noon, you can just rely on Bacon to patch and reboot, and you can just check at the very end of your duration to make sure everything went okay. Next up, we have patch history. So we're actually capturing all the patching information about your machines once you install the agent. And this allows you to export this along with other tables in Bacon to an Excel spreadsheet. And here you can see all the patches we have available for every single machine that Bacon's managing, as well as all the patches we are able to detect it's installed in the past. This is a pretty nice one for auditing because there's a lot of different things that you're not going to be able to see through like the standard OS patching history, if it has. Some don't, or some are better than others, to be honest with you. So it's nice to go through here and have like a single pane of glass view of what patches have been installed, have been superseded, and we can of course search for this, filter for this, all that kind of good stuff. Over in files, bundles, and manage packages. So Bacon is able to push out software. There's a couple different methods. We have our manage package feature. This allows us to push out software, and we're managing the versions here for you. So essentially, this Bacon server has been set up to download the latest version of 7-zip. Whenever there's an update, we'll update this, and then push it out to machines based on this state here, these automatic configurations that we've set up. We also have support for pushing out other file types, so you can actually upload files into Bacon and deploy these. The UI looks pretty similar to how we did it with the patching side. So you'll pick your machines, you'll choose your different parameters to push out. Over in the bundle side, that's basically a collection of files. So if we wanted to push a file with some prerequisites, maybe some configuration XMLs, additional scripts, this will be really good for you. So in the case of like an Office 365 bundle here, we're pushing out our executable, which is the installer. We have our configuration XML, which tells it to, I believe, install Visio and Pro Plus. It's just standard Office. And then we have a configuration script in there as well to kind of call everything. So there's a lot of different options you have in Bacon to push things out. It's very flexible, so do keep that in mind. Then over in the profiles and state side, as I said, this is our automation. So here we're able to see what kind of things we're managing. This can be very simple stuff like, hey, I want to set the company wallpaper on every machine. It can be security-based stuff that we want to get alerts on. It can be setting up firewalls. We did a demo on this actually where we went through and set up firewall policy for each of the 3 major operating systems. Just went through that. So there's a lot of flexibility here too. And again, remember, you're not only making this configuration automatic, you're also enforcing it and monitoring it because you can get those alerts if your configuration is drifting in your environment and which machines that's a member of. That's kind of like a very quick look at Bacon. There's always more we can do. We love doing demos and like walking through different products based or different options, excuse me, based on your use case. So if you're interested, please do reach out. Now with that, that's our overview. I think we're ready to jump into some of the newer features. What do you think, John?
I think it's a great idea. I know we're going to start with one that is considered sort of a small feature, but I think it's a huge change. So without stealing your thunder, why don't you pop right in?
Sounds good. So as John's saying, we have a lot of current customers on here, so I'm really happy for that. We have an amazing feature. This is one we kind of had to remind ourselves to put on this webinar. It feels so at home with Bacon that it's crazy it hasn't been here the whole time, and here it is. So for those of you who have used Bacon, there's a new button up here, Views. If we look at the old Bacon, it doesn't have views up here. It's just actions and columns. Views allow you to do two things. You can save the way you have your screen here set up. So if I want to move these columns around, I can do that. If I want to set certain filters, I can do that. Then I can save that configuration to a view. And there's an extra step which I think really makes this feature super helpful. So if I click here, there's multiple people who are able to save views and they can choose to share it with everyone else. So one of our developers, Brett Gilmer here, has some views. I have some views here. We've got some default ones. This allows you to then create your own different cuts of this table, manipulate the data however you need to for certain use cases. Say maybe we have one that's focused on Mac OS or focused on patching, stuff like this. And you can share those with your team. So that makes it super simple to get a consistent layout for everybody and make sure they're seeing the information that you think they're seeing that you want them to be aware of. So that's pretty huge. And this is one of these features that it feels at home with Bacon. It's something I think we all wanted. I know like before when I did the webinars, I would set up all the views ahead of time or set up all the filters and stuff. And so even for me doing this, it makes it so much more simple, so much more intuitive to walk through here and kind of just cater my my filters for whatever task I'm doing. So as John said, it's a very simple feature, but I think it's right at home. Chris says amen for that feature. So is Justin. Yeah, this stuff is huge. So those are two current customers. What's up, guys? This is a really big one. So it's just little creature comforts that save a ton of time. I mean, come on, we love that. That's what we're here for. So good stuff. All right, with that, let's get to the main feature of the hour. Unless I missed anything about views, John. I think I got everything.
No, you nailed it. Thanks.
All right, let's get to the good stuff. So down here, vulnerabilities. This is also new for all the Bacon veterans. You can see there's a little bit of a difference here. So let's explain what we're looking at. So we have CVE, Tenable, and remediations. We're going to start top and work our way down from there. So now Bacon is able to detect vulnerabilities. We're using the NIST database. So we're scanning your machines to see what kind of vulnerabilities you have and how we can fix those things. So here we have over 8,000 vulnerabilities, almost 9K here. And as we go through here, we're going to have a lot of different things. So I know John's talking about Flash Player. I know that's in there as well. Different kinds of things that we're able to detect. And we're going to give you as much information as we can find, even down to if it has been known to be exploited. So we have this CISA exploited. Actually, John, can you give us a quick explanation on what this means whenever we see this on these different CVEs?
Yeah, this is actually, it seems small, but it's kind of a huge differentiator. So everybody knows that there's a lot of vulnerabilities out there. And a vulnerability means that somebody somewhere has figured out a way that they could, exploit or harm a system or a piece of software. But that doesn't mean that those vulnerabilities are currently in use. So the rating systems that are out there in this sort of shared CVE methodology, they go kind of 1 to 4, and 4 is bad, right? But a 4 doesn't mean that it's actively being exploited. Maybe it was exploited years ago and it's not really now. Well, the thing about the CISA list is they basically decided, and if you know CISA, they're a really great organization, and they're a really important part of the security community. And basically what they said is, we want to know what's being exploited in the wild now, right? If it's out there and it's being exploited now, it's your biggest problem, right? So if you are found to have that vulnerability, you are really in the lion's mouth at that moment. And so one of the things we wanted to do was take an independent group from what was in the vulnerabilities database, and we wanted to match any vulnerability that was found on systems with whether or not it was actively being exploited. So the idea there for a workflow would be, if you see that one of these is on that actively exploited list here when you come into Bacon, make it your top priority. Don't go to lunch. Don't do anything else. Get that patch, get that figured out. Get that configuration change in there, or take those systems offline if that's the only solution that's currently available. But know that there's a high probability that you'll receive an attack related to that. So we didn't think we were going to get that capability in before RSA, but we did. So it's in there, and you can see any of the vulnerabilities on your systems as having that once we're able to get this version 5.0 released to everyone. So really excited about that part, and yeah, continue on, please, Dave.
Awesome, love to. Get some feedback. Pablo says that's huge. It absolutely is. It's a massive time saver. It's gonna get better too. So just you wait. There's an extra piece to it, which is really big. So we're looking at what one of these CVEs looks like when you open it for more information. And if I actually click this view link here, some of you may have seen me do that earlier, it's gonna open the relevant article from NIST. So we can actually go through here. And this just saves the time of having to like Google it, match it up, make sure you have the right reference and stuff like that. And so now you can understand this is known exploited vulnerability, and you can see what it is, what it's affecting, all that kind of good data, so you can figure out what to do, right? So that's pretty good. Switch back to Bacon, let's go over to compliance. So over here, we're gonna see how compliant our machines are based on those vulnerabilities. So here we have the CVEs, and we're going to see how many of our machines do or do not have this resolved. Again, keep in mind, this is our beta labs. There's like thousands of CVEs. It's loading tons and tons of data just so we could like make these views. Usually the environment's not going to be this intense, but you get the idea. So here we can see percentage of machines resolved this issue out of those that actually have the problem detected. That's pretty huge because we wouldn't be able to keep up on this, excuse me. Everybody's boss wants to see the screen. Let's be honest. So do we, to be fair, but we're trying to make sure this is easy to see. You can figure out where you have to work, what you got to do. So here's your CVEs. From the other side, we're also able to track it by endpoint. So maybe you have some really high value servers. These could be production stuff. It could have a lot of like sensitive data in it. And you don't want to see this red bar here for those servers. So this is another way to take a look at it and make sure you're able to go through here, figure out how many CVEs you have, like 3,000, and how many have been remediated, right? So there's a lot of different ways here. Again, keep in mind, these tables can be exported, so you're able to use these for reporting and like showing that you're keeping up with everything. Now for the last part here, aside from that, we also have the option of going through history. So if we go over through here, we can actually see what those remediations were, when they were done, and how long it took us. So again, another good one for reporting. We found the problem, we've solved the problem, and we need to be able to prove that. We got auditors, we have this information now available to you in a couple clicks. So very simple to see what these CVEs are and what we did about them, when we did it, that kind of stuff. Now moving from there, so this is Bacon's own method of doing this and scanning the things, but we've also grabbed some tenable integration, which is one of the top products in the market. So this allows us to have even more data fed into Bacon about what kind of vulnerabilities are found and how we want to go about addressing those. Really quick, got a question from Chris. Is the time to remediation automatic as manual field? This is going to be automatic once you actually remedy the situation. We'll detect it and then save that in here. Next up, moving over to Tenable, it's going to look very similar, but now we're actually using Tenable and their available plugins to scan these machines and report back what they found from that database. So we're pulling all the information into Bacon, just like we did before. And so here, when we pick something, let's say, I know we're looking at Flash Player, maybe it's just like Chrome, right? It's probably a pretty safe one, if I can spell it right. No Chrome? Oh, it's nuts. All right, we'll go with Firefox. That's fair. So look at Firefox here. I'll click this. We're going to get very similar data back, right? Again, what is the issue? What are remediation details? So here, going through here, this is going to pull up our remediations, which we're going to cover pretty soon. But this is basically showing you which machines have the problem, what we can do about it. And then again, we have a link. This time, instead of going through NIST, this one's going through Tenable. So this lets you know what it is. And again, a description of how to solve it, what the solutions are, more information about it. So going through here, let's go back to Bacon. See an awesome question from Taylor. How's it going? Basically wondering, are we just showing you CVEs or can we actually do something about it? That's the good part. That's the time saver. So let's go ahead and jump over there and take a look actually. So we're gonna go to remediations. And so I have a couple different kinds of remediations here. I have patches. So let's say this CVE exists, but it can be easily solved by some kind of OS level patch. You know, update this KB, push this update to your Mac OS, whatever it is. Those are pretty simple. So we can go here and it's actually going to be able to track which patches you need to install, and then you can actually just push those out from here. So we're not only showing you what's going on with your machines or what kind of vulnerabilities you have, we're also including every shortcut in the book we can find to help you patch those in limited time we all have, right? So That's kind of number one here. We're able to just go through here, install that. Fantastic. Next up, we have configurations. This is going to be more of like an OS change. Maybe we have to do a registry key or change some kind of setting. So I think a lot of us remember initially kind of phasing out SMBv1 and the whole mess associated with that. So that could be a configuration you actually do have to push out. And so over at Bacon, we're over here writing different states and different remedies for these. So for us, it's pretty simple to use our kind of pre-built technology to solve this. So in the case of disabling SMBv1 for both the server and the client side of things, or the client service, I should say. Here, we actually wrote a state, may not be rendering right. We wrote a state here to disable this. What it's actually doing is it's going through and setting those registry keys to disable SMBv1 on the server and on, or as a server and as a client side. And so from your side of things here, you can just apply this to your machines, right? We already know who needs them, and we can just pick our groups and push them out quite simply. So here we've found the problem, and then we're also helping you solve the problem. Lastly, let's take a look at packages. And so this is pretty simple. This is going to be an application update kind of thing. So we have a vulnerability in the browser, as all of them seem to have, and we can easily update our way out of it. Fantastic. Then we can go through here, and using our manage packages feature, we can go and just upgrade those machines, in this case with Firefox, to solve those CVEs. As Spencer said, it's a game changer. It absolutely is a game changer. This is massive. Anybody who's had to go through these like reports of like 100-page PDF telling you some super obscure library is vulnerable and you have to figure out which app uses it drives me nuts. This is like pretty massive. It saves you a ton of time, a lot of guesswork. Now, that being said, there's always going to be those little things that require human touch, and that's what this action side is for. So this is more of like a manual intervention. These can be things where it's definitely a good security idea, but maybe not one we can automate as easily or as intelligently as we'd need to. Something like, let's say, I know there's one for one of your users has never changed their password. Maybe that's a service account. That's something a human can log in and take a look and figure out what to do. So while we can give remediations, like let's say there's one here for making sure you don't have any local users you're not using. We could make a remediation to easily just delete all local users, and maybe that's what you want to do. But again, it's in this like actions column, so you can take a look yourself as an admin. You know your environment better than we will, and you can decide on the best choice of action here. So yeah, there's like a lot of new things this kind of opens up. What we've kind of found is that security is not really something that's an option anymore. And a lot of places just devote entire teams or entire resources to just keeping things patched up and at like the top of their game. And even if you're a small company, these are still just as important as if you're a massive company. So we need to take those shortcuts where we can to make sure we can help everyone get everything patched up, lower the amount of vulnerabilities, and not have to spend a ton of time doing it. Because that's the big thing is it's always just time. So, John, that's kind of my overview here. Anything else you want to cover? Anything you want to drill down into greater detail?
Well, I think maybe more of a recap because it's kind of a lot of things in once, right?
That's
So
fair.
maybe just to give people some sense, the release is going to be available sometime around 1 month after RSA. So that's what we're aiming for right now. We're on really good track with that. So I don't want to make any commitments. We're going to be ahead of schedule, but it is going really, really well. This basically all works today, and already a lot of the testing's kind of underway. So that's always the biggest challenge I see, Chris asking on there about that is you really have to test things, and QA takes quite a bit of time and commitment to get all the way through. So that's the big thing with that. And also there's little tweaks and improvements that we see. And one thing that's, I think a lot of the people on here are obviously IT people. So just to give you a little sort of inside baseball on how this works, when you're working with outside APIs and tools, one of the biggest things is that when you're in there, you tend to find like little shortcuts or little advantages you could offer, additional information. And so, you find yourself going, oh, well, what if we added that? Or what if we did it this way so we could show the data in a more effective way or more efficient way? So there's little things like that come up, and they're really, really important. So we don't want to do this particular feature in a way that comes up short. Not that it's not a fine thing to continue to add on to it, but we really, really want to get this one right, or sort of stick the landing, if you will, because we just have seen that this is causing a lot of suffering, and there's a limited supply of different tools that can really cover these different areas. And the only tool I know that even covers kind of half of them is quite expensive. So from our point of view, if you're really trying to solve this problem, you know, we've gotten a lot of experience on what it takes to deal with it, and you know,
Mhm.
I think you'll have a good first version, you know, about a month after RSA. The other thing I wanted to mention, Dave, just kind of to go over this little view that you're on right now, you can comfortably say that when it comes to endpoints, all vulnerabilities fall into these four categories. Basically, something you can patch the OS for, something you can remediate by upgrading third-party software, that's under that package section, or thirdly, something that changes a configuration on the machine. It could be a firewall rule, a group policy, a config file in Linux or Mac. It could be a registry setting in Windows. And all of these things, one of the things that's going to be really different here is Bacon gives you the ability to use our templates or to build your own, you know, states today to put in the profiles. And that's a really powerful thing. But one of the things that we wanted to make sure we also did was deliver the fixes for vulnerabilities to you. So we will be streaming, right? If you have this feature turned on, we will be streaming these fixes to you. So you will see, if you go to the action section, Dave, it's actually a good explanation here. The action section, which is the fourth section, is kind of the catch-all, because there are vulnerabilities that either don't currently have any way to fix them other than turning a machine off, or the fix is more of a judgment call from an admin, like something that, you know, Tenable tells you, hey, check and see if any of your user accounts on this machine could be deleted. We don't know if you think those, you know, accounts should be deleted or not. Could we make a state to delete them? Sure. But the reality is that you're probably going to be selective and thoughtful about what you choose, or maybe you want to make a state that gets rid of any that haven't been logged in for over 3 months or something like that. And those are a little bit in your customization side, and we'll certainly help you with that if you have questions on it. But in general, one of the big things, Dave's kind of showing that particular one because it's a good example for that. But really what we're trying to do is get as many things out of that action window, and the software stuff and the OS patching stuff kind of automatically gets sucked out of there into their proper column. The configurations one, we have to write it, but we only have to write it once for everybody. And I'm going to tell you right now, a lot of the ones that are worth doing there are really registry settings. And we've got people that are dynamos at that. Even Dave is one of those dynamos that can write those states quickly. And why have you all figure it out on the fly? We'll just write it for you, and it will just show up in there as an optional fix. You can click apply once and apply it to, you know, tons and tons of machines, all of your machines, quite frankly, if they need it. So that's kind of the thing I want to make clear here is if you've got a vulnerability for an endpoint, it's going to fit in one of these four buckets. And what we had kind of seen in looking around at antivirus products that sort of see vulnerabilities, but they don't do anything about it, right? Or you get a tool that is a scanner like Tenable, right? Tenable's the best scanner I've ever seen. The problem is that they didn't design that tool to be the doer, but rather just a seer. So a great thing about Tenable is it can see more, right, than anything else out there on the marketplace. And that's why we gave the second option here of being able to use that as the visibility thing. And then that just adds additional information to what we find from the CVE database, right? But they do a ton of work on their little plugins. And the plugins is what they call sort of, you know, it's what they sort of talk about when they're talking about a vulnerability. They look for kind of a whole solution to that. And so some of the things they're talking about are not going to be things you're going to see in the vulnerability database or found by a lot of other scanners. It's things that they see as security problems. And so I really like the Tenable integration. You can use both Tenable SC or Tenable IO, now called Tenable Vulnerability Manager, which is the cloud version of that. And that allows you to use agents on your machines as well as the scanners in your data centers and collect all this great information and add it into Bacon. And it doesn't mean you won't still get all the information we get from the vulnerabilities, national vulnerabilities database and all that kind of stuff, but it really adds that next layer up. So if you're already a Tenable shop, or you're really concerned about compliance or meeting some requirement that's really, really serious about security, I would urge you to look at the combination option there. So we kind of refer to that as find, fix, and report, so FFR. And so we wanted to make sure that we gave you a complete solution to find the vulnerabilities, to fix the vulnerabilities with very, very low amounts of effort, and then be able to report on that, be able to see the history in either a summary or completely broken out level. Dave, I don't know that we got too deep into this, but everything that we showed you where you're saying, I want to look, for the last 3 months at from the point of view of every endpoint, what vulnerabilities did they have in that time? How many got remediated in that time? How many were remediatable or actionable in that time, right? And to be able to do that, and then not only be able to look at it on the screen very quickly, but be able to export that into an Excel sheet. Everything you see in Bacon can be exported into Excel, including all of this vulnerability information. And you can do that from the context of the vulnerabilities and list it that way, or from the endpoints themselves and list it that way, or get the complete dump, which is a one-to-one of every vulnerability to every machine broken out separately. And then maybe you're a pivot table wizard and you like to do your own Excel reports or use Power BI or something like that, and you can do all of that. So that's kind of the long and short of what's going on here with Bacon. If you guys have any good ideas to add into those capabilities, we'd love to hear them, and really appreciate everybody filling out the survey at the end. I love, somebody just said super exciting stuff and they have to head out, but Baconators mount up. I love that. And by the way, I would have put Baconators in our marketing, except we can't because it belongs to, I think, Wendy's. So we heard, or Burger King or something. So yeah, we can't use that one, but we can use it on the webinar, darn it. So thanks everybody for attending, and thanks in advance for filling out the survey. And I hope this is exciting stuff for all of you. We really appreciate you coming out today, and really excited to get this into your hands. So take care, everyone.